Breaking Down the Law is sponsored by Battleborn Injury Lawyers.
President Trump signed an executive order on Monday threatening to cut federal funding to states with cashless bail policies. That could put Nevada's recent bail reforms in jeopardy. That order directs the U.S. Attorney General to identify states that substantially eliminated cash bail for serious crimes and authorizes federal agencies to suspend grants and contracts to them. Nevada passed significant bail reform legislation in 2021 that reduced reliance on cash bail, but also enacted more modifications in 2023. So what does this executive order mean for Nevada's bail system, and could recent legislative changes stop Nevada from losing federal funding? Here to discuss it all, we have attorney Matthew Hoffman with Battleborn Injury Lawyers. Matt, thank you so much for joining us. I think up until a few days ago, a lot of us didn't even know what cashless bail was.
Yeah, it's been a hot topic in the conservative circles. But essentially, you know, the default in most criminal justice systems is it's presumed that if you you're accused of a crime, if you want to be released and come back later for your hearing, you got to post bail. And what happened over the years with that is that it disproportionately affected a lot of poor people. And you'd have people that could have something for a very minor crime be subject to, let's say, $500, bail. And they don't have $50 to pay a bondsman to get them out. It's 10% is what you got to put down. And so you had people that are spending all this time in jail for these minor crimes. And if you think about some of the minor crimes, let's say petty theft, well, you're committing petty theft because you don't have any money. Well, how are you going to make money when you're in jail? And so the reasoning, I think, everyone's heart was in the right place of like, look, too many people, poor people, are just spending time in jail for nothing offenses. Let's reform things. And so in 2021, they changed it where the presumption is no longer that you should post bail. The presumption is that you should not post bail. And the burden is on the prosecutors to prove by clear and convincing evidence that you need to impose bail. Otherwise, it's least restrictive means. Well, the reality is that that gets passed, right? Well, prosecutors come into these arraignments and they've got 30, 40 files in their hands. They don't have time to go through every single one and come up with these particularized arguments. Like, hey, we need bail, this person's a flight risk, or whatever. Mm-hmm. And the judges have no discretion in this under the 2021 law. So the result was that we essentially had a cashless bail system outside of the most egregious crimes.
And that was just off a default that they didn't have time to, I guess, look into every single case. But then in 2023, they tried to reform it. They
did. They reformed it, and they gave the judges more discretion to, again, not to jump right to bail, but instead to have these other alternatives like home confinement or geographic limitations, staying away from witnesses, what have you. Whatever incentives are necessary to get people to actually show up to their hearings later. Because that's the idea of bail, is that if you don't show up, to your real hearings, well, now you're out all that money and you can go to jail for, skipping out. So they made some changes, but with those changes cost a lot of money. It increased, remote appearances by attorneys, electronically, and you had more public defenders and making attorneys more available. And with all that, it comes expense. Well, who do you think pays for that? A lot of it, grants from the federal government. So now we're faced with the federal government saying, hey, you have a cashless bail system, essentially. We're going to withhold federal funds, the very funds you need to keep going with the system you have.
Wow. And so could that happen even though these reforms were made a couple of years ago?
Yeah, I think it could. I think they could be trying to make a political point in Nevada's favor. You have Governor Lombardo, who is the same party as President Trump. I think that there's a chance that you could see the governor call a special session to just address the 2021 changes, to try to modify them in such a way to not have to face this federal funding withdrawal, because that would be a nightmare.
Do you see any opposition to it?
I could see the opposition. I just don't know if I don't think it'll be successful. The federal government, when it's grants, it's funding, it's kind of at their discretion.
And it's substantial too. We're not talking about,
millions.
Yeah, we're talking millions and millions of dollars.
And remember, when the federal government wanted everyone to have a drinking age of 21, other states opposed. They said, fine, you just won't get any funding for your highways. Well, guess what everyone did? They changed their drinking age to 21. And I could think we could see the same thing, this deterrent effect, or this, they'll kind of coerce you into complying with doing things the way they want, or you won't get their money.
Okay. How soon do you think we could see this change happening?
If it's going to be a legislative session, it would happen this fall.
Okay.
So it could be very, very soon. I think they're analyzing it and probably talking to the federal government now saying, hey, are we going to be targeted? Because
maybe asking for a reprieve in the meantime.
Exactly. Like, okay, fine, let us make some changes before you start pulling funds.
Okay.
I think that's the practical.
Well, time will tell. Thank you
we'll
for
see.
breaking it all down for us. A lot of stuff happening. Again, if you haven't been in the legal system or know folks who have, you probably didn't know that this was a big issue until just a couple of days ago. But of course, this is another one they'll be watching for you. And if you have any legal questions that you want answered, Matt can certainly do that. Email us at breakingdownthelawnews3lv.com.